him to the stage. Justin had a really transformative experience in his life working on the Crow Creek Indian Reservation. Hi, Justin. Good morning.
How are we doing today?
Come to the middle of the stage. Are you going to use the podium?
No.
You're just going to Phil Donahue this thing?
I would love to sit down, but I'm going to stand.
Okay, you're going to stand.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll let you just take it away without further ado, because you've told me a little bit about your talk and that you're gonna connect some dots that might otherwise be needed in an intro.
So welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me. One of my favorite things to do, connect dots and make moves with people that are change makers in the world. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Carlotta, for having me. Super excited. Esca Bona is one of my favorite places to be each year, and when I heard they were bringing the Esca Bona vibe to Expo West, super excited to participate, so thank you. So a little bit before I was born, a couple days before I was born, my brain bled. And so I was born with cerebral palsy. That was a struggle in itself. I spent most of my childhood in physical therapy, trying to be mobile, walk to the best of my ability, stand to the best of my ability, and breathe to the best of my ability. And on top of that, I am extremely dyslexic, which makes it super exciting. So not only was I getting pulled out of school multiple times a week to be in physical therapy, I was also struggling with reading and math. And as you can imagine, missing school doesn't really help when you're already struggling with those things. So very quickly in life, I learned about priorities and community and connecting dots, right? So I couldn't write a letter to somebody and tell them how I was feeling or what I needed, so I needed to learn how to speak and use my voice and find my community for myself. And by the time I was in about 7th grade, I had 9 different surgeries, learned how to walk 3 or 4 different times in my life, missed school for months at a time, and I met a guidance counselor outside of Chicago who basically would invite me into his office, and he knew I didn't want to be in class, so he would say, as soon as I walked in, before he said anything, "This sounds really important. Close the door. Let's talk about it." I was like, all right, what are we talking about? And we would sit there for hours and just talk about life. And, really just about life. He started talking to me about Native American culture, spirituality. We swapped books, and every once in a while he would say, "You get it." And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? I get what? I can't read, I can barely walk, I really have no intention of going to college, like, what do I get, Well, I didn't know for years and years and years, I'm still not sure, but it was a repetitive conversation that still plays through for me today. And, when I was 14, I still had the same guidance counselor because he got accused of stealing money from the middle school, which he didn't do, and he got moved to the high school, and he wound up being my guidance counselor again. So I was like, well, maybe we're supposed to do something, right? And he called me into his office my junior year and said, "Hey, I want to start this program. Would you like to lead it with me?" I said, "Sure. I don't know what it is, but I definitely do." And he said, "Let's get a Greyhound bus and pack it full of food and clothes and school supplies and go to Crow Creek Reservation in South Dakota." I said, all right, sounds fun. So we went there. It's an Oglala Lakota reservation in South Dakota. I was 15. And we distributed this Greyhound bus full of essential goods with 8 at-risk youth from Chicago. Now, I don't know what at-risk exactly means, but we were at risk of something, so we were all going together, everyone in the school. And while I was there, I met with people my own age, 15, 16-year-olds, who we would talk about life. They had the same dreams and aspirations. You talk to the guys, they wanted to be pro basketball players, but the one thing that was really different between Chicago and this reservation was that suicide came up a lot. And it came up so much that they would even, they shortened it. They would just say committed. My sister committed. My brother committed. My aunt and uncle, well, they committed, but it was a drunk driving accident. But they committed too. And we went to a powwow on the reservation, and I met an 11-year-old there, and we hung out, and I was in photo at the time, so I was taking pictures and stuff. And we got back from the trip, and my guidance counselor asked me again, hey, will you come into my office, and will you bring all the photos that you took? And I said, sure, great. So he's looking through them, and he's like, I want to let you know that this boy committed suicide the day we left. He was 11. He decided to stab himself, and that was the moment where my life changed. Kids deserve access to basic necessities, and something shifted in me where I went from, I don't have this, I can't read, I can barely walk, life's tough, to I'm going to figure out how to do something different. So about a week after graduating high school, I was at a string cheese incident concert in Denver, Colorado, and I met an organization called Conscious Alliance, and I found out that they were bringing food to Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, just 4 hours from Crow Creek, taking music, taking art, taking community, and bringing it together to feed those in need. So I joined. I thought I should join the team, so I did. And we started working with, this was one or 2 years after the organization was founded. We started working with major bands around the country and hosting large-scale food drives at concerts. We're taking places where there's 50, 100,000 people, 9,000 people, and hosting large-scale food drives. And this is where the influencers come in. We've been able to distribute over 2.6 million meals to food banks across the U.S. By activating generations, 15-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 35-year-olds, families in the fight against hunger, utilizing musicians' voices, artists' voice, leaders in the natural food world. And, it's connecting dots that make things possible. So what I love about this so much is that we get to start the conversation, we get to continue the conversation and move. Pine Ridge is roughly the same size as Connecticut for 40,000 Oglala Lakota with one grocery store. Pine Ridge is 6 hours from Conscious Alliance office and the New Hope office. And the life expectancy is 48. Diabetes is 800 times the national average. So there's a lot of opportunity. In 2015, with the help of Justin's, Plum, and Suja, we launched the nation's first all-natural and organic backpack program for kids. That means that 250 students get to go home with a backpack full of the best brands in the industry when they wouldn't have access to food on the weekends. And this isn't, they might not have access to food. 109 of the 250 students are considered homeless because of their substandard housing. So if we can keep kids in school, keep them motivated to be in school, keep them fed on the weekends, the opportunities are endless. And that's where, again, connecting the dots comes in. Conscious Alliance is relatively a small organization with an annual budget of $1.8 million. But when you're able to leverage folks like Michael Franti, Dave Matthews, Jack Johnson, and folks like Justin Gold and Neil Grimmer and many others, we can create change that lasts generations. And that's what we're doing all together, not as one, but as thousands. So thank you.
So that's what Esca Bona is all about. It's about those kinds of solutions. It's about that kind of heart. It's about that kind of story, and coming together and helping one another so that we can accelerate this kind of good work. So I encourage you, after we are done today, to make sure, if you don't know Justin, to get a time to connect with him. And is there anything that your organization might be able to do to help him in the work that he's doing to help Pine Ridge? So our next speaker is someone that really doesn't need much of an introduction in this space. Walter Robb, he is the former co-CEO of Whole Foods Market, and we just inducted him into New Hope's Hall of Legends last night here on this stage. And Walter has done so much in our industry and been so much a part of the growth and the expansion of our industry. But so much more than that, he has spent so much of his time mentoring entrepreneurs and new companies and helping people like Justin who are addressing healthy food access as an issue. And one of the companies that Walter is focused on helping right now is called Foodmaven. It's also in Colorado, and I want to bring Walter up to tell us more about Foodmaven and introduce his friend Patrick Bultema.
Thank you, Carlotta. Good afternoon, everybody. You doing all right? All right, you got a big room to fill. So I'm very happy to, I think one of the benefits of having been doing this for a long time, almost 35 years, is to see that we've kind of laid down a foundation of belief in things. And we're now beginning to see, I can see the next set of things to work on as an industry. And one of those things to work on is the amount of food that's being lost in the system as it's set up right now. So Patrick will go into great depth with this issue, but the issue is essentially that 40% of the food produced is lost in the United States, and 25% of landfills is food. And this is not, we're not talking about the stuff off the salad bars at Whole Foods at the end of the day. We're talking about the way the systems are set up between supply and demand. So I was introduced to Patrick. He's from a family farm, Lundberg. Carl, I don't know if you knew that, but he's cousins to Grant Lundberg, who was up here last night. And so he understands farming. But then he ventured off, I don't know why, into software and ran a couple of companies there. So of all the folks I've met, the first thing that I look for is what's the quality of the leader? Do I think this is a leader that can really make something happen and make it grow? And Patrick is that such leader. And so I've chosen to invest in the company and also spend time joining the board, because I believe this is a big problem that's really got no scalable solution at this present time. There's really nobody addressing this problem in any sort of, these are all old school systems. So Patrick Bultema, my friend here to the left, is the CEO, founder, CEO. He's built a nice team. He's in Denver and really just getting this company, Foodmaven, a couple of years old, getting it started. And I'd love you to hear what he has to say about what Foodmaven is doing and how they're working. And I'm proud to be your partner.
Great.
So,
thanks, Walter.
Right,
thanks so much. Yeah. You know, it really is. I'm so grateful to have not, just folks like Walter leaning in, but just such a growing amount of awareness on the issue. You walk the hall and it's hard to not kind of recognize that we do a spectacular job of, the U.S. food system is pretty amazing at growing the quantity, increasingly the quality, variety of food at an incredibly low price. And furthermore, we're pretty good at getting it pushed out to kind of every corner of the United States. Now, of course, we've got food deserts, and for folks that don't have money, they don't have great access to food. But when you go to the kind of the major grocery stores, we do a great job of always having everything all the time on the shelves. We're just not good at getting it all used. So I mean, you hear these big kind of hand-waving numbers. 40% of everything that farmers produce is thrown away. Hundreds of billions of dollars lost from the system. Third of what's going into landfills is food waste. You know, meanwhile, we've got 68% of farmers, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, that are on the economic red zone, which really means on the verge of bankruptcy. And with all this food being thrown away, 42 million Americans that are food insecure. I mean, that's just a context that, you know, as a kid who grew up on a farm, that just is painful. I mean, that just doesn't feel like stewardship. And you know, so the issue of sustainability and doing right is, I think we all have to kind of vow to do better at making sure that we're good stewards and using the food. So a number of years ago, and again, Walter shared, you know, it's not everybody gets to stay on, especially the family farm. And so, you know, I was kind of one that got kind of pushed to go off to graduate school, and then I've been a venture-backed CEO. But even when I would come back, my grandpa would always kind of joke that you can take the farm out of the boy, but you can't take you can take the boy out of the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the boy. And so really still have very much of a sense of kind of stewardships and connection and roots. And it was so good last night to not only be with Walter as he received recognition, but first cousin Grant Lumberg to see the recognition of that family legacy. But you know, a number of years ago, I actually stepped into I was in an endowed chair at Colorado College, kind of as a give back thing, helping them get an innovation entrepreneurship program up and going. And I just decided I was going to dig back and try and understand, what do these big arm-waving numbers mean? How in the world can we be losing 40% of everything that farmers produce? And in some categories, produce, the estimate's as high as 70% of everything produced is lost. So, and I began to kind of discover what are the places in this system where it happens. And I'll just give you a little kind of a preview of some of what we have learned. You know, Walter alluded to it. We really have this kind of pretty antiquated, outdated food system. It's kind of a creation of the 1950s. It's okay at pushing lots of stuff through. It's not good at any time there's any exception. So anytime, you know, something isn't going down kind of the normal path to get to the store or get to the restaurant, you know, when something happens, overwhelmingly that food gets lost. Partly because we've all kind of as a society gotten to this kind of place of an abundance expectation. We really expect that we're always going to have everything all the time. And in the grocery industry, it's gotten to the place where the kind of accepted wisdom is, if you or I walk into a grocery store to buy a particular item and they're out of that item, there's a 40% chance on that one event that that person's, you know, buying pattern will change. And so in a quest to keep from losing customers, we're on this, like, the unforgivable sin is to not have everything all the time or not being able to fill the order. And so from the farm to the packing shed to the distributor, all the way to the big grocery distribution centers and stores, you know, there's an enormous amount that gets lost that's really the oversupply in this quest to always have everything all the time. Second category that we've discovered is what we kind of put in a category of imperfects. Everybody kind of thinks, oh, well, it must be dates, and yeah, dates are, short date is an element, but anytime there's a brand change or short lot or something doesn't kind of hit the cosmetic spec, product gets lost. And these things kind of go together, and I'll give you an example. We're at large grocery distribution centers, and it's not uncommon to see a load of, and I'll use the example of organic butterhead lettuce. It hits the dock, it's offloaded at the grocery distribution center, but they probably have enough butterhead lettuce, and so they get fussy, and they'll say, you know what, those heads of lettuce are slightly too small. That product gets hauled to the dump. And it happens every day at every kind of point along the system. And then the final thing that we discovered is local food. So while there's a lot of talk about farm to table, the truth of the matter is there isn't a system for it. And so, you know, local growers really struggle to get access to the market. They may be able to have a great sourcing relationship with a Whole Foods store, but if they have another 20 or 30% of the crop, oftentimes they have no place to go with that crop. And so that was what Foodmaven is really focused on. We said, what if we could actually apply kind of big data technology, kind of internet, best of internet, to help suppliers be able to kind of recover what was otherwise getting lost, where they were going to do something they didn't want to do, throw away perfectly good food, And if we could get them kind of an economic recovery and create a system for that. And then so we don't create conflict in the channel, we're taking the food to food service. So we're selling to restaurants, institutional kitchens, commercial food businesses. So we've kind of avoided the channel conflict with retail grocery. It's an economic model that kind of makes money for suppliers and is savings for buyers. And one of the things that's been really encouraging is increasingly people care about kind of the broader mission. Whatever doesn't rapidly sell in our kind of marketplace, we take to donation, to anti-hunger charity partners. And based on data, because we've created an economic incentive and a logistics and information system for all of this, we double to triple the amount of food that goes to donation. And then finally, we're on a zero landfill policy. So again, if you go back and think about those kind of ugly things, 40% of product lost, hundreds of billions of dollars, with farmers that are increasingly struggle just to make ends meet, and a horrible economic or environmental impact, as well as really the social impact. How can we kind of live with ourselves throwing all that food away when we have people that don't have food? We've really kind of addressed all three of those in the model of what we're doing, and really profoundly grateful. Let me end with a story of how this is playing out, and one that is just literally the last couple of days. So recently I was on a panel with a fruit grower from the western slope of Colorado, a peach grower. And he rather kind of casually said, every year he produces about 800,000 pounds of peaches that he takes to the retail market, to the fresh market. And he loads about 800,000 peaches into dump trucks and hauls it to a ravine and dumps it on his farm. And the room it was just like a gasp. And it was like, how in the world could you do that? And he had no place to go with those number 2 peaches. So we're actually facilitating one of our our nonprofit partners is Springs Rescue Mission. And they've created a social enterprise preparing food for a for-profit. It's helping some of their clients get onto a better trajectory of life, generating kind of revenue for the mission. And so, a really nice package. And we're now working with them to create an opportunistic company to be able to say, you know what, we will take those peaches and make frozen peaches. We'll make peach preserve. But for me, it really is kind of encapsulating this story of saying we've got to be more flexible and agile, kind of these core ingredients that Foodmaven is bringing as a complement to the big food system to be better stewards of food. So thank you so much. It's been great to be here and really thrilled with just the level of interest that people have in saying, let's stop wasting perfectly good food. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Scott Kucirek, are you here from OCHO Candy? Scott's going to tell us a story about linking good food, good jobs, and good communities together. And he has a backpack. Oh, okay. I thought he was going to throw candy.
It does have candy.
It does have candy in it.
Not enough for everyone, unfortunately.
Welcome, Scott.
Oh, yeah. Check out that picture. That was the one time I grew a beard. My family, my wife and daughters, I don't know if you have daughters or wives, but they pretty much dictate your fashion sense and how your grooming is going to be. And so for my entire life, I wanted to grow a beard, but I was not able to do it, not because I couldn't grow a beard, it's because they didn't want me to. And then finally one day, I don't know, we're on vacation, they said, oh, why don't you just grow it out, which is one of my great luxuries because I'm not a big fan of shaving. And then I grew this beard, and I tried it out for 2 months, and I realized I also didn't like a beard because it's really a pain in the backside. But anyways, thanks for having me here today. It's really nice to see you guys here. I'm Scott Kucirek. I'm the CEO of OCHO Candy. How many of you have ever heard of OCHO Candy? Oh my God, that's amazing. That's unbelievable. Hopefully you love our candy. OCHO Candy was started about 8 years ago with a simple idea that we can make much better for you, better tasting candy. Really simple idea. But today what we want to talk about a little bit is how that kind of journey led to where we're at today, providing jobs in a neighborhood that many people thought we were insane for going into. We're a little unusual than most companies you see here today. We actually make our own candy. We've always made it. Up until 2 years ago, we made every bar by hand. And then we finally found a company crazy enough to build the automated equipment so we could keep up with demand. But when you start a company like this and you get going, one of the things that's really important is you got to have some foundation of why you're doing it. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about that. And essentially it comes down to three things. You got to have a great purpose, you got to have tremendous people, and you got to have great partners. And if you have all that, you're going to have a great product. So that's, to me, like the new 4 Ps of marketing, because that's really where our mission is. And when you go around and walk the floor here, you see that's also very common among successful companies. So many people say, what kind of purpose can you have when you're making candy? It's a candy bar. But what you start looking at is why you as an entrepreneur get going, why you do this. And essentially, my partner, who is Dennis Ringen, he created the 365 line at Whole Foods. So a little thing you might have known there. He's kind of a foremost expert on organic and natural products. And both he and I were friends. Our kids went to school together in elementary school, and I was an entrepreneur. And we both came to the same conclusion around the same time. For me, the watershed moment was about this time of the year in March when I go into the pantry, and what's in there? Old Halloween candy that's sitting there. And it could still stay there to Armageddon. It's not going anywhere. It lasts forever. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm giving this to my daughters. Something's not right with this picture. And my partner had been analyzing the entire organic space and said, sooner or later, somebody's going to make an organic Snickers. It's going to be made with clean ingredients, and it's going to taste a lot better, and consumers are going to like it because he'd seen with Honest Tea and Annie's Mac and Cheese that migration was happening. And now, fast forward today, it's just a revolution. By the way, we had this discovery around 2005. And so it took him, though, 5 years to get me out of real estate and tech and to do this company with him. So in 2010, OCHO Candy was started. And over time, what we realized is internally, when we talk about what we're doing, we have a phrase. It's called discover the good inside. Because for my partner and myself, what's really important is seeing the best of an individual or a place or an opportunity, especially in today's climate where there seems to be a lot of focus on adversarial conversation or finding the differences or trying to figure out a reason why you don't want to talk with somebody or why you don't want to work with them or why you shouldn't have them here. We don't look at that way. And so internally, we try to say, what can we do to make things better? What can we do to facilitate a better community, a better work environment, a better product, a better consumer base? And essentially what that leads to is where we're moving forward with a slogan that you'll be seeing coming out in the next year, because we've been very quiet for a long time. It's called What's Inside Counts, because that is really how we feel about our mission and what we're doing with our candy bars. So if you get a purpose and it's lined up right, then it's easy to go to the number one asset you have in your company, which is people. Now again, as I mentioned earlier, against the entire tide of what's going on in the food space right now with co-manufacturing, we decided to build our own factory. We decided to build our own factory because literally no one else had the capacity or ability to make the quality of bars we wanted in a reasonable fashion. We also felt that was very important to control how the product came out, how to innovate, and we had another crazy idea. When you start a business, it's an opportunity to improve a community because you can start bringing jobs there, you can start influencing buying patterns around the neighborhood, you can be influential with the community leaders. And so of all the places we picked in the world, we went to West Oakland. And I can tell you, when we signed a lease there, many of our friends, relatives, partners were like, what, are you going to drive an armored tank in that area? And we said, no. Actually, this is the perfect place to do it because it's a very diverse neighborhood. It's up and coming. But the other thing is the jobs we have at OCHO Candy do not require an engineering degree from Berkeley. They're very basic center making, packaging jobs. Doesn't mean you don't need good people. It gives an opportunity for people who live in that surrounding area that might not have had an opportunity for jobs, especially in the Bay Area, which has become very tech focused. Like if you're not working at Facebook or Uber or something like that, then what are you even doing? Then you're probably like, cleaning their bathrooms or mowing their yard, right? It's just very, very sad that it gotten that way, and because no one wants to manufacture anymore. But we thought that was a great opportunity. So we went there, and we're very happy to say that the type of people we have working in our company, which we just call them colleagues because they're really just at the same level of importance as myself or my partner or any of our managers, is because without them, we don't have any candy, is we brought in women who are the sole breadwinners. They might have a kid or two. This might be their second job. In fact, many of them are. They might not speak English very well. They might not have a lot of opportunities in other areas, but they're wonderful people and they're very dedicated and they're very professional. And so over time, we've been fortunate to find these people and bring them in and really take care of them in a way that we would want our relatives or our family to be treated on an everyday basis. The entire plant is open. There's no clocks being ticked on how fast they're packaging candy or feedback that they need to work harder or faster. Because we've discovered over time, if you treat people well, they will work harder than you ever imagined, just because they have pride in what they're doing and they believe in the company. And so that's been so critical for us. And when people come to our plant, they are usually surprised by the environment. Essentially, one of the things I like to talk about is the music selection. So as you can imagine, when you have kind of repeatable work, it's important to have good music. Well, you have 30 different people with 30 different backgrounds, can be quite decisive. So we just set up a very basic rule that everyone gets to pick 5 artists. It goes into the Spotify mix, and then I'm telling you, when you're sitting there working, and we work just right by the factory, the offices are right next to it, in a day you can hear like traditional Thai music, Korean pop, hardcore rap, country music, opera. I put in some opera, I have to admit. And then I'm excited. I'm like, hey, my artist came up. But it's just that idea that everyone is valued and diversity is encouraged. Because just because you have a different background doesn't mean you're not somebody who is really a great contributor to society and the community. And then I think the last thing is the partners. It's really important that, if you have the right people and the right purpose, and we've been fortunate to grow jobs in an area that didn't have any, and there's a lot of other food companies around us now, is then you find the right partners, and those partners are your civic partners. So we've went out of our way to work with the city of Oakland, because the city of Oakland has a lot of problems, and what they need is more help from business leaders. We believe strongly that it's not a marketing tool to do what's right for your community. I don't know when this started happening, but when I grew up, businesses in my hometown sponsored Little League teams. They gave to the Rotary Club. They helped out families who are in need. And they didn't do it because they thought they're going to get 10 more likes on Instagram. Essentially did it because that was what you do in a community, because you're part of the community, you have to grow it. So for us, that's how we work with the city of Oakland, trying to help out them, trying to point out where things could be cleaned up, working with the other businesses around us. One's a steel recycling plant. And so they're generous enough when people try to dump garbage all around that area to come clean it up. And we help offset the cost and give their people candy and stuff like that, because it's all better if we all work together. And over time, that starts making a neighborhood cleaner. More businesses come in. It's better for people to live there. And then you start reversing the cycle of poverty and depression there. But it also is important on a global case. So we're all 100% organic. We use fair trade chocolate. Because we want to make sure there's sustainable farming practices and living wages. We try to buy as much local stuff as we can. So we use Clover Butter, who we love north of us. Unfortunately, no one's growing coconuts in Northern California, so I can't really buy coconuts from that. If someone wants to start a coconut farm, we'll be about that. But, and just wrapping things up, what we've trying to go out and say is you can actually start manufacturing in America, in cities. They'll probably be very overjoyed there, and you'll find really quality people who will make a big difference and really benefit not only your bottom line, but your social mission. Anyways, so thank you so much, and have a great show. Appreciate it.
Okay, so now I have more reasons to eat more OCHO chocolate. It's really amazing, and to know what goes into it makes it even more so. So as we move on to our next speaker, I wanted everyone to know, if you were at one of the tables, we've got these little seed packets, which I just noticed, which are so great. So if you are going to be starting your spring garden, grab those. And they've got the dates for our Austin event, October 22nd through the 23rd. So if you are interested in more of this kind of content and really getting to know these kinds of good food movement leaders, I hope you'll join us in Austin. And I'm really glad to bring up to the stage our next speaker, Judith Ackerman, who is the Corporate Engagement and Marketing Officer for Metro Caring, which is another Colorado organization. We didn't mean to bias it toward Colorado, but there's a lot of good stuff happening. And Metro Caring is Denver's frontline hunger prevention organization. And Metro Caring provides people's immediate needs for nutritious food through its food retail center, but the organization does so much more than that, which Judith will tell us about. And I've had the privilege of working with Judith in Metro Caring. One of my roles, aside from working at New Hope, I'm the board chair for a group called Naturally Boulder. And Metro Caring has been our philanthropic partner. So we've had a chance to do service projects at Metro Caring, our Naturally Boulder membership, do some food and donation drives, really get to know this organization, and now working with them to hopefully be able to help them with their Seeds for Success program, which I know Judith will talk about. So let's bring Judith up to the stage.
I'm so glad I followed Scott. That was awesome, if he's still out there. So companies want to give back. They want to help their local community and beyond, make the world a better place. And with the best of intentions, some companies focus on how much they give back in some quantifiable way, like donating food or a percentage of their proceeds go to a nonprofit of their choice. Improving the lives of others isn't a commodity like donating canned goods. It's about people. It's about providing tools so that people can provide for themselves and their family. Every day at Metro Caring, we see about 100 families who are struggling to make ends meet, who are shopping in our free fresh foods market. We see anyone from single parents to service veterans and even young professionals who are really just struggling in the cycle of poverty. So we need to start thinking beyond basic needs, that it's not just about the food. If you're looking for ways to give back, a great place to start is by taking care of your greatest commodity, your people. If every company made the investment to make sure that each and every one of their employees made a livable wage, you'd actually be making a greater impact by reducing the demand for food assistance. Mission-driven companies have become the norm. You spend a lot of time focusing on your purpose or your core values. It becomes the foundation of who you are, and for many of you, it affects everything from where you source your ingredients to how your products are made. You want to make sure you're providing good food to your customers. But are you making sure your employees are healthy and happy too? Can your staff sustain themselves? Hardworking people shouldn't need food assistance. The face of hunger isn't the person standing on the corner holding a cardboard sign. Most of the people who come to Metro Caring are working. They have jobs and they pay rent, but they still don't earn enough to survive. We need to stop looking at them as other people and looking at them as people who could be us. When Ava was growing up, her mom was a single mom of 4 kids. She worked hard to put food on the table, and Ava was the oldest of the kids, and so she had a lot of responsibility at a young age. When Ava was 13, she had to quit school in order to help her mom support her family. She met her husband when she was a teenager, and he was an electrician and had a good job in a factory. So they began to plan for a family. And when Ava was 17 and about 6 months pregnant, her husband lost his job and couldn't find work anywhere. He heard from a cousin that there were jobs in Denver, so he moved, and when Ava's daughter was about 3 months old, she and Stephanie followed. She worked for many years in fast food, first in the kitchen, then on the cash register, and then on to other jobs. And she remembered working at the register the first day and just worrying whether her English was going to be good enough. Most years, her husband had 2 jobs and Ava had 1 job, so she could drop off and pick up the kids from school. And even with 3 jobs between the 2 of them, they still had a very tight budget. Healthcare and childcare costs were so high, rent was constantly rising. One month, Ava's family was really stuck, and she had to turn to Metro Caring to help feed her family. It was such a relief to know that in the months when things were tight, Ava could provide the foods that her kids liked. And when her youngest daughter started school, Ava was able to start focusing on herself. She started taking cooking classes at Metro Caring and learning how to lead a healthier life. She was very excited about the knowledge and information that she was gaining. The classes were so powerful to her that she wanted to find a way to bring them to her Spanish-speaking community. But at the time, Metro Caring didn't offer those classes in Spanish. So Ava began working with our registered dietitian right away. She translated the courses and helped to recruit people to sign up. Ava did such a great job teaching the classes that our Metro Caring team helped her to turn it into a career. And so now she's teaching other people how to live healthier lives. And now Ava today doesn't have to work just to pay the bills. She's able to bring education and knowledge to the people in the community so they in turn can also lead healthier lives. She's become a real role model to her kids and makes her kids proud. But the unfortunate truth is that stories like Ava's are all too common. An estimated 41 million workers are turning to government assistance, such as food stamps, to survive. People are working full-time, sometimes more than that, but still don't earn enough to make ends meet. What can we do to help people get beyond meeting their basic needs? The goal is not just to get by, the goal is to thrive. I met Sarah for coffee a few months ago to thank her for bringing several groups of volunteers to Metro Caring from her company. Sarah was so excited that she could recruit 20 coworkers to volunteer with us in the community. That's when I learned that 5 years ago, Sarah had to come to Metro Caring for several months to feed herself. You see, Sarah had recently moved to Denver from LA, was unemployed and struggling for money. She was out of work and struggling with mental health issues that also made it difficult for her to work. A friend of hers in Debtors Anonymous recommended she go to Metro Caring to help her get by until she could get back on her feet. Sarah was very hesitant to go to Metro Caring. She felt intimidated to ask for help. She'd never been in that position before. She didn't have a car, so a friend drove her a couple of times, and a couple of times she took the bus. It was a very humbling experience for her, and she felt embarrassed. She looked around the waiting room and thought that people must be wondering what she was doing there. She thought, I'm well dressed enough. I don't look like I need food assistance. She was treated with respect by the staff and volunteers, and every time she was leaving, the staff would say, hope to see you again, and she would always say, I hope not. Sarah ended up going to Metro Caring for 4 times, and then eventually she started finding work. It took some time for Sarah to get back on her feet, but finally in 2016, she was able to land in her current job, which pays well, and allows her to not only provide for herself, but to give back to her community by introducing her company to Metro Caring. Her company gives employees 8 hours of paid volunteer time per year, and Metro Caring was the first place that came to Sarah's mind. Sarah is thriving. She's moved beyond just trying to meet her basic needs. She's looking outside herself, paying it forward, and is able to bring her company with her. She's engaging her company to support the needs of the community, and they offer her the benefits to do so. Do you have someone like Ava or Sarah working in your company? We don't always know the backgrounds of the people we hire. What's their story? And how can we as employers support them? Not just on their journey forward, but through our understanding of where they've come from. We're all in this together. We see people every day who are talented, but who still struggle. The fact that we have skilled, experienced people who still live in poverty begs us to ask the question, why aren't there enough jobs that pay a livable wage? Let's shorten the lines at places like Metro Caring. Food is a right and not a privilege. Let's take care of each other by reducing the need. People like Ava and Sarah just want to be able to afford their own food. Don't we all? Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. One of the things that really stood out in Judith's stories that she just told was kind of the family impact. And our next guest, Mark Rampolla, we're going to do a little Q&A, and I'm going to give him a big gushy introduction before I do that, but one of the things that I've noticed in his personal story is the impact that his wife has on his decision making, and I find that really powerful and interesting. So Mark, I'm going to ask you a question about that. Be ready. Mark Rampolla, as many of you probably know, was the founder and CEO of ZICO, and it helped create the coconut beverage space, and he sold it. And he's now running Powerplant Ventures, which has invested in over 50 social enterprises. He is also not been able to stay out of the arena as a CEO and running a business either, which we'll talk about. And he'll tell you a little bit about the social entrepreneurship that he has been able to create in that business. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Mark Rampolla. I don't know where you are, Mark, and there you are. And we've never met, but I know who you are. So, okay, cool.
Meet you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And most recently, Beanfields, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
And
red pants and all.
oh yeah, you're on brand, baby. Well, let's have a seat.
Sure.
We'll put your Beanfields right here.
There you go. Lead by example.
Yeah. So welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you. So one of the things that I read about you that I found fascinating was you talk about this marriage of mercenaries and missionaries.
Yeah.
And your father was a nuclear physicist.
That's right.
And your mother was a social worker.
Yeah.
So these high contrast marriages are a part of your life.
Wow, Adam,
right?
this wasn't in the pre-Q&A question list here.
No, it wasn't.
You're going deep here.
But I think it's really interesting, and I think the way that your wife inspired you and your thinking around ZICO is really interesting too. And
Yeah.
we'll get to Beanfields, but maybe we'll start in this place of letting these better angels of your nature or household influence you and how that works.
Wow.
I'm really fascinated by it.
Well, and my lovely wife is in the room. Maura's here, so I'm glad to have her along with me on this journey. And yeah, you know, you're getting to the core of the matter here. It's been, look, I feel like I've lived my life in two worlds, and probably less so the physicist and the social worker than in, let's say, social work and business, you know. And so I grew up in a household which had no exposure to business. You go back a generation, my grandfather was, but my family, no one was in business. Youngest of 6 kids, we didn't grow up around business people. The only business person I remember from my childhood is a dear friend of ours, father of the family, was a Maxwell House coffee salesman for the Southern District of Pittsburgh, you know? So, but for some reason I was drawn to it, and I think it was in college, and I met friends that grew up in entrepreneurial families, and for a lot of reasons I was drawn to it. Yet, my household, we grew up learning about social impact. My family was very Catholic, but activist Catholic. My mom used to always say Jesus was a radical, and
Yeah.
and so I did do Peace Corps after college, which was much more in line with sort of the way I was raised. But then after that I went back and got an MBA, but yet I also did a master's in School of the Environment. So I think I've always bounced between those worlds. And Maura very much the same way. Grew up in a family that was very intellectual. Father was a researcher, MD, PhD researcher, but also very, very active, very socially active, very activist in a way with a real social mindset. And I joke, in my book, which is very true, like
High-Hanging Fruit is this book, by the way.
Thank you for the plug.
Yeah.
Dinner table conversation was what was going on in El Salvador in the 80s. That's what we talked about, so the fact that I wound up running a business there was, ironic, but probably absolutely appropriate for the journey that I'm on, so that tension has always been there. And what I love about, what's been wonderful is Maura has supported it and cultivated and helped, me sort of try to bridge both of those sides, and I'm still trying to bridge them.
Well, I love the dinner table conversation. I'm the oldest of 5 kids too, with a similar background in terms of parents that had cultivated an interesting conversation around the dinner table, but also letting you know that you needed to show up and do good in the world.
Yep.
One of the things you talk about in the book a little bit, which I've gotten to skim, is this notion of a true north in your life and in your career. And it's hard when you're the keeper of that compass, and you're getting buffeted by real concerns in business. And I just wonder, and this is also not on the list of pre-approved questions, but this is what people want to know, Mark.
Yeah, I'm game.
Because I mean, you've been extremely successful. You've had a major exit. You've invested well. All of those things, and yet
Not always.
Well, that's true. Well enough.
Yes.
And when you think about that compass, you know, everyone has a different true north. And to the extent that you're comfortable talking about yours, I wonder what that is. Like, what really helps you? What's the magnetic pole of the compass?
Wow. Oh my God. I'm gonna struggle with that one, really. And you know, I'm at a point in my life, but I know my wife is just laughing right now because I am, you know, yet again in a real serious crossroads in my life, and just trying to figure out what that is. You know, what I tend to think now is, you know, less about that specific true north than, you know, really trying to be true to myself, and trying to decide what kind of life I want to live, decide what kind of impact I want to make, and also be freeform, you know, sort of let life happen. And so it's a combination of, you know, sort of heading in a direction and seeing what the heck happens. And I'd say overall, what really drives me though is I do love business. I love it, love it, love it. At the same time, I feel guilty about it every day. Yeah, I really do. You know, I hear stories, you know, some of the earlier speakers talking about the work they're doing, and I think, should I be doing that? Am I doing enough? Yeah. And yet, I also, frankly, look at this room and say, why the hell isn't this room packed? Yeah. You know? And so there's so much work that needs to be done, and somehow I feel compelled to try to bridge those two, you know, to sort of bring my talents, my abilities, and this drive that can and is in many ways destroying our world, and try to channel it to saving it, you know? And so I have no idea what that means.
Well, I'll tell you what I heard. You expressed a desire to be conscious of what you're doing. Yeah. You know? And that's courageous in and of itself, to hold attention of the two things. And so maybe let's talk about Beanfields and Homeboy Industries before this thing starts blinking at us, and you don't get to talk about that, because that's a powerful illustration of what you just said.
That's a prime example. So, you know, after I left Zico, my wife and I were, you know, spending a lot of time thinking about what we wanted to do, where we wanted to spend our time, and issues we wanted to affect. And we discovered, we're sort of aware of this organization, Homeboy Industries, which does an incredible job of helping young men and women create lives after gangs in jail. And they have amazing success and great data on their anti-recidivism rates. But they're a small, you know, nonprofit. And so, you know, we met with Father Greg Boyle that runs that, met a lot of the homies that were there, and I felt moved. And I made a commitment to Father Greg that I was going to help build a business that they would own a chunk of, to help grow their asset base, create some recurring revenue, and ultimately create job opportunities for their graduates. So Moore and I started working on some projects, and it was going to be a beverage, and it sat on a shelf for 2 years because I remember how idiotic it is to try to start a beverage business. So nothing ever happened. And then Beanfields came along. We were angel investors in Beanfields, loved the company, loved the mission. Basically very simple. Bean and rice-based chips, high in protein, high in fiber, non-GMO, safe, better for the environment, healthy. But the founders the Glidden family had also had a real commitment to non-GMO, real commitment to social impact. They're not only a B Corp, they're a public benefit corporation. So a lot that I liked, but they got the business up to a certain scale and were struggling to get it any further. And so Reed, you know, the founder, asked me if I would help. And so I thought about it, you know, talked to Maura, talked to my partners at Powerplant, some other people I'd worked with, and thought, you know, I want to do this. And so we put a group together to buy control of the company, but I also had one condition: we got to fit Homeboy in. And so Reed cried. It was a dream of his to sort of see this scale in a way. And the challenge then was, okay, how do we figure it out to make it work for investors, to make it work for the founders, to make it work for Homeboy? And we came up with a structure where all the investors pledged between 10 and 50% of their upside to Homeboy. The company committed 1% of net revenue to Homeboy, and we committed to try to use our time to support Homeboy. We committed to pay livable wages and support that throughout our system to the extent we could. And we were off and running, you know. And then I dove in. Originally, I was going to be a board member, decided to step in and run it. And so now the amazing thing is we got to scale this like any other product, you know. And so we are neck deep. You know, I'm neck in right now, deep in trying to figure this out. The beauty is the impact is built in. When, because we scale this thing, it's going to be a benefit to Homeboy. And we hired our first Homeboy grad. There you'll see a lot of people in red pants out sampling. One of them is a guy, Miguel, that, you know, went through their program, has frankly a rap sheet that long, tatted from head to toe. Probably couldn't get a job anywhere else, but he's in our warehouse, and he's phenomenal. And he doesn't get a break. He's got to bust his butt like anybody else, and he does. So, you know, we're figuring it out. I don't know how it's going to work out in the end, but now I get to kind of do what I do, which is scale businesses and hopefully have an impact along the way.
One of the things that's really resonant in that story you just told too is this notion of asking for pretty bold things.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Maybe just with a little bit of time we have left, just talk about your thought process in making those big asks, because clearly you made a commitment to a person in a room that was on your heart, and you were kind of carrying that around with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then you had to go ask people.
Yeah. Yeah, look, of course I'm in a very fortunate position. I've had some success. I know that makes it a lot easier, but it is possible. And so I encourage people, have the ask.
Yeah.
You know what? We had to talk to a lot of investors to find ones that would support this, but we found them. And we got to a point where we didn't ask, it was a requirement. Right. Now, of course, if we hadn't gotten the money, the requirement might have changed, right? So it's a very different situation where it's sort of an ask versus saying, this is the way it's going to be, full stop. And what we found is we did find investors. We had to tweak the model a little bit to get them comfortable. But what we found is we attracted world-class investors. Same with employees. Every employee comes in knowing that they could make this, but they might make this because they're working here. And we've attracted incredible talent. We're attracting incredible distributors and brokers and everybody by having the ask. So I encourage people to make the ask.
Thank you, Mark. This thing is making an ask of us.
That's right. Thank you. Great question.
Yes.
Exit stage left.
Exit stage left. Will Burke is with us today as well. I'm not going to ask Will a bunch of questions he wasn't expecting. Will just gets to speak for himself. But Will is the founder and CEO of Soul Simple, a progressive and organic and fair trade fruit processing company that's rooted in Nicaragua, focused on making a positive social and environmental impact. Patagonia Bars and Provisions are exhibiting for the first time ever at Expo, and he's a supplier of theirs. Soul Simple has pioneered transparent partnerships with smallholder farms, providing technical guidance and financing to support the transition from conventional to regenerative and organic agriculture. Will and the Soul Simple team are designing and implementing high-impact projects with private and public sector partners that link regenerative smallholder farming families to international markets with an aim to deliver market-based solutions that alleviate poverty and climate change. Please help me welcome Will. Nice to meet you, Will.
Nice to meet you as well. Thanks so much for having us. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, and it's great to speak amongst these other speakers. It's a great event to have to be part of Esca Bona as well as New Hope. It's a pleasure to share our story. There are 1.5 billion smallholder farmers in the world, and I'm here to talk to you about one in particular, but also I'd like to share how natural and organic food companies can actively support smallholder farmers and farmers like Maria Santos. That's the story that you're going to hear today. So we're going to talk about how to improve their family well-being and how to protect their environment. This is based on the experience of Soul Simple, which has been working with over 500 regenerative organic farmers for families for over a decade. The story of Maria Santos. Maria is a single mother and a regenerative organic farmer. She farms dragon fruit, or pitaya as it's known commercially. Over 3 decades during the Nicaraguan Civil War, Maria and her family, as a child, moved to La Concepcion, a small community on a volcanic hillside in Nicaragua. She still lives there on the farm with her 4 children and her elderly mother. For years, the family relied on subsistence farming of maize and beans and some dragon fruit. Maria's income came from a small surplus of her bean production and limited dragon fruit harvest, as well as temporary jobs in the nearest town. Market access was tricky. Maria waited for an intermediary to purchase at the farm with cash in hand, or she'd try her luck at the local market by getting up in the early dawn. What little money she made went to support the family's basic needs. When the seasonal rain came, it would pound and pound on their small home. The roof leaked, their floors would often fill with mud. Rain bombs washed away the topsoil. But the rains didn't last long, as they should have, as the dry season came and stayed longer than usual. The drought shortened the growing season. The farm hadn't been managed with conventional inputs in years. The family couldn't even afford them. But they kept farming, they kept producing. They were poor organic. No agrochemical inputs, but no technology in their organic farming. This is a typical profile of a smallholder farmer in Nicaragua and many other parts in the world. So in 2011, Maria joined SoulSimple's Farmer Network. Through training sessions, direct technical assistance, the confidence of having a contract, and access to financing provided by SoulSimple, Maria had adopted regenerative organic farming techniques that increased her farm productivity. She's now producing her own compost and planting ground cover to manage soil conservation, which harbors increased nutrients, provides drought relief, promotes water percolation into the watershed, and draws down carbon from the atmosphere. SoulSimple purchases directly from Maria, paying her a fair, steady price throughout the season. This income has allowed her to expand her house, pay for her children's education, and invest in her farm. Maria and other smallholders in the SoulSimple network are leading the revolution of regenerative organic agriculture that is reducing poverty and fighting climate change. So here you are listening to this story. What relevance does it have to you? Well, quite a bit. There really are 1.5 billion smallholder farmers in the world. And in low-income countries like Nicaragua, the second poorest hemisphere in the world, they dominate in the agricultural sector. And Expo West, Expo East, and BioFach in Germany, these are the showcases for launching, or the launching pads for the natural and organic industry, the movers and shakers, the innovations, and the disruptors. We as an industry created this market from products like quinoa, acai, chia, moringa, pitaya. And it's growing at a staggering rate. Market-led organics are often driving unrealistic targets of growth. The founding principles of organic agriculture are about change, not upholding the status quo. The 4 simple principles, health, ecology, fairness, and care, represent very clever, groundbreaking thinking. By applying these 4 principles appropriately, while working with smallholder farmers, we can make a better world. Some people here at the show look at regenerative agriculture and organic as a logo. They're missing the point. It's about upholding the 4 principles. So some lessons that we've learned at SoulSimple. In Nicaragua, we've placed a smallholder directly into our core business. We produce and sell solar-dried organic fruits, fruit juices, purees, dried powders to customers in 4 continents. Most of SoulSimple's smallholder farmers supply organic dragon fruit, mango, pineapple, on an average farm size of less than 1 hectare. Before working with us, most were largely subsistence family farms with little access to technical resources, international markets, let alone credit. Today, they enjoy greater and more sustainable incomes, healthier farms, and an improved environment. It is the effort of these amazing smallholder farmers that has helped SoulCysimple become the leading organic and natural fruit processor in Nicaragua. Here are a few challenges that SoulCysimple has experienced along the way, and we're working towards improving. Smallholders live in poverty. Most of them do. Subsistence farming that doesn't produce sufficient income will lead to more poverty, making it either continued rural despair or migration into urban areas of and seeking low-skilled employment. Farmers worldwide are nearing their golden years. The average age is 60. The next generation needs to be motivated to continue the legacy of their family's work. Access to finance for agricultural inputs, improvements, and expansion is the missing link in most of the world. 70% of agricultural exports in a country like Nicaragua come from smallholder farmers, and 90% of them do not have access to any sort of financing. We need to improve yields and enhance regenerative and organic techniques, make farmers more climate change resilient by managing soils and protecting their watersheds, develop producer webs and connectivity, transparency, agricultural diversification to diversify income, minimize risk, and promote agroforestry systems that are more symbiotic. You have a call to action. Smallholders have the best advice. Increase their incomes. Pay a premium for direct and transparent sourcing. Get on the ground and inform yourself and your partner, and align yourself with the partner and supplier. Then put suppliers on the spot. Push them, insist on change. Align with others, especially the new disruptors, and live by all 4 organic principles: health, ecology, fairness, and care. And do not be naive about power. And remember, in the end, it is families like the Santoses and the producer webs that they belong to that are on the front end of the regenerative revolution. Maria Santos's family supports themselves with the sale of pitaya and have increased the diversity of their plant and animal production on her farm. Her eldest son just graduated from high school. Her daughter is not far behind. He plans on moving back to the farm and supporting her. Not only has her income increased, her farm is strengthened, making it more resilient to climate change, allowing future generations like the Santoses to live by the land and on the land. We invite you to join us in partnering with Maria Santos and hundreds of families just like hers to promote regenerative farming that supports people and the planet. Whether you're a progressive company like Patagonia Provisions and Pitaya Plus, looking to source regeneratively, a company that looks to improve smallholder sourcing, investor or change maker who wants to promote smallholders in the regenerative revolution, feel free to talk to me or my colleagues. We are in booth 8820, and stop by and try some of our amazing products and learn about the revolution to live the revolution. Viva la revolución. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Those were great tips. So we're going to keep the focus on agriculture, and our next speaker is Rachel Strower, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Land Institute, a nonprofit based in Kansas focused on the development of perennial grains, pulses, and oilseed-bearing plants that can be grown in ecologically intensified, diverse crop mixtures known as perennial polycultures. Don't know what all of this means? Well, you soon will, and you'll also understand how this work will help us create an agricultural system that mimics natural systems in order to produce ample food and reduce or even eliminate the negative impacts of industrial agriculture. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. I grew up helping my father restore a degraded tallgrass prairie in central Kansas, which informs why I now think I have the best job on the planet, working with an organization focused on bringing the ecology of natural systems to farming, and specifically with perennial grains and diverse cropping systems. After leaving the corporate world, I joined the Land Institute over 3 years ago, and I couldn't be prouder of the people I work with every day, Our team of scientists are subject matter experts in the growing field of perennial grain, plant breeding, and ecological research. So for the story. About 40 years ago, a maverick genius, my former boss and forever friend, Wes Jackson, looked out at the tall grass prairie and saw the future of agriculture, and by extension, the future of a sustainable world. When I wake up every day on this same amazing prairie, where I was born and raised and am blessed to work today, I can see it too. I see that prairies don't need fertilizer, irrigation, or tillage. They're resilient, diverse, and productive. What if agriculture could be like that too? When Wes imagined this future, he guessed it would take 50 to 100 years to prove the concept. Luckily, he was wrong on that, and luckily, he was right on all the important stuff. It turns out he was really onto something when he imagined that a new agriculture could be self-sustaining, soil-enriching, carbon-fixing, drought-tolerant, food-producing, perennial, and polyculture. How's that for sustainability jargon? Joking aside, there's some power in jargon because it can point to the revolutionary dimensions of change as deep as this to our food and agriculture system. It can point to the vastness of the challenges we face and also the power of visionary solutions such as perennial grains. So here's where we are today. After 4 decades of rigorous research and 20 years of intensive plant breeding, the first perennial grain has hit the US market. And maybe you've tasted it right here at Expo West. The grain is called Kernza. It's developed at the Land Institute, where I work. Before I do anything else, I'd like to give a big shout out to our partners, an amazingly diverse bunch of innovators, ranging from the market leaders General Mills and Patagonia Provisions, to the many cutting-edge restaurants, bakeries, and breweries across the country who are showing us all that sustainability can really bolster the triple bottom line, and it's delicious to boot. I always say that's a perk, not the purpose of my job. I especially like to thank Minneapolis's truly original Birchwood Cafe and the Perennial Restaurant in San Francisco, whose entire menu is focused on climate action and features perennial foods. From these folks and more, I have tasted Kernza sourdough, croissants, cookies, crackers, pasta, cake, whole grain salad, beer, cereal, and wait for it, ice cream. Domesticated from a wild relative of annual wheat, Kernza is still very much in beta phase. An international consortium of scientists is researching the grain's impacts on soil health, water, and carbon, as well as how it can be grown with other perennial crops, such as legumes, that provide nitrogen and further boost soil health. There are dozens of questions that must be answered and challenges that must be solved for this crop and other perennials like it to be viable for farmers and broadly suitable in the marketplace. But the science tells us that the promise is real. Our research is proving that long-rooted perennial grain crops sequester far more carbon than their annual equivalents, and they keep it in the soil year over year. They utilize water and nutrients more efficiently and prevent the leaching of nitrates into the water table. They build soil organic matter while defending themselves against drought and disease. Perennials outcompete weeds, so herbicides, you imagine, could become a thing of the past. In short, the ecological promises of perennial grains are robust. This new technology, perenniality, represents the closest grain agriculture can come to functioning like natural ecosystems, and our best shot, in my opinion, at sustaining human life on this planet for generations to come. It's a little sciencey, I know, but let me interpret this for you. It's a game changer. Isn't that inspiring? Doesn't it give you hope? So full of solutions for the vast array of environmental and social challenges we face to trying to feed a climate-changed world of 8 billion people? It is. And yet, we're still at the beginning. We're at that part of the story where the heroine has found her calling and her confidence and set out on her mission. But with every good story includes its fair share of daunting challenges, and we're staring those down today. As everyone in this room knows, we're facing the impact of 10,000 years of agriculture, and it ain't pretty. Modern agriculture is at once the foundation for human sustenance and a far-reaching ecological catastrophe. Let's remember, that the staple crops we eat today were developed over centuries of selection and with billions of dollars of investment, and now have powerful interests who are deeply invested in this status quo. Let's remember, croplands are still losing soil much faster than it's formed, and over 450 oceanic dead zones continue to form every year because annual agriculture leaks fertilizer. Let's remember that climate change is accelerating in ways that make life so very uncertain and so very scary for farmers all over the globe. Let's remember that our food system is designed around the crops we have now, and new supply chains take time to develop. Agriculture itself is a major contributor to climate change, soil degradation, and water scarcity and pollution. The economics of agriculture compromise the livelihood of farmers and the communities they feed. Under the current paradigm, it's unlikely our soil can sustain human life for the long term. But don't worry, this is a drama, not a Shakespearean tragedy. At least I hope not. We don't think we have to wait centuries for perennial grains or perennial agriculture. We know that given modern plant breeding techniques, recent leaps in molecular analysis, genomics, and bioinformatics, this vision is within reach in our lifetimes. It's only within reach, though, with your help. Yes, we have proof of concept. Yes, we have amazing partners. Yes, we have a robust research program, but now it's time to scale up all this work and face the supply chain challenges so we can perennialize agriculture systems globally. Another way of putting it, realizing the full potential of perennial agriculture on a global scale will require a movement. And that's why I'm here today, to ask you to join that movement. It will take all of us, farmers, retailers, scientists, foodies, business leaders, creative folks, and social media junkies. We'll need investors, philanthropists, and policymakers. Proof of concept does not mean we can stop and just watch Kernza revolutionize agriculture. Today, we lack the yield and the seed supply, among other things, for that to happen. What proof of concept does mean is that with an expansion of research, we can get there. But that depends on you. We need you to join us on this journey in whatever way you can. If you're a farmer, we need you to tell the world that you're ready to see this change, that you'll plant perennial grains as soon as improved seed becomes available. If you're a food business, we need you to test Kernza in your recipes. Tell farmers you'll buy perennial grains as soon as they plant them, and lobby hard for investment in perennial grain R&D. If you're an eater, we need you to consume Kernza products already on the market. If you're a policy person, we need your help analyzing the supply chain pitfalls and opportunities and helping balance the policy landscape in favor of sustainable solutions. If you're a social media whiz, we need your help telling these amazing stories. And of course, if you're a philanthropist or an impact investor, we really, really need your help scaling this up. Many of you are here with us today. I invite you to join us on the journey for a truly regenerative, perennial future of agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I can't believe it. This is a new thing for Esca Bona. We're actually running a few minutes ahead, which is great because hopefully those of you who have been here for the last couple of hours, if we've shared these Esca Bona stories, you are feeling inspired. And I thought before we get started with our keynote speaker, who we're so excited to have close out our Esca Bona story stage, I thought it might be nice for folks to just take a moment and introduce themselves to someone that they don't know, maybe someone at your table or that is sitting near you, and tell them one thing that you are excited about in terms of how you plan to engage in the good food movement or a way that you already are engaging. So we'll just take a moment. So in case there are more people coming to hear Rose speak, we will not be starting early but on time. So please introduce yourselves. So thank you. Hopefully everyone got to meet someone they didn't know, maybe heard another inspiring tidbit about work that someone else is doing in the good food movement. We really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy Expo West schedule to join us for the Esca Bona Story Stage. We're sorry we had to move it from outside inside, but it was actually nice to have this space to share together this afternoon. And we do hope you will think about joining us in Austin, October 22nd through the 23rd for our 4th annual Esca Bona Conference in Austin. And in addition to this kind of inspiring storytelling around the good food movement, Esca Bona this year will do a project that we call the Esca Bona Fix, where we give brands that are trying to bring a game-changing solution to the good food movement, but are facing some challenges. We invite them to present their innovation and their challenges, and we break out into mastermind working group sessions to really provide those entrepreneurs with some new ideas and connections and a network that can help them break through those challenges. So we do hope, if that sounds exciting to you, that you'll be able to join us. And so we're going to close out our Esca Bona Story Stage with a keynote speaker that my team has been so excited about for months as we've been working to bring Rose Mercario to the stage. We are so inspired by the work that Rose is doing, and really glad that she will be able to share her story with you today. And Rose is the president and CEO of Patagonia, a company she joined in 2008 as COO and CFO. Since taking the helm as CEO, Patagonia has quadrupled its sales and profits. Rose also created the company's first in-house venture fund, oversaw the development and creation of Patagonia Provisions, an organic regenerative food company, and has championed the benefit corporation movement, resulting in Patagonia becoming the first legal benefit corporation in California. Upworthy named Rose one of the 9 most inspiring CEOs in America. President Obama honored her as a champion of change for Patagonia's family-friendly work policies. Fast Company named her one of the most creative CEOs of 2016. And just recently, Patagonia was named in the top 10 innovative companies in the world for its work in regenerative agriculture, activism, green supply chain innovation. Under her leadership, she has deepened Patagonia's commitment to environmental activism and using business as a force for good. And we're so pleased to bring Rose to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you had a good show and a nice expo. There was like so many people here. It was crazy. You know, I have so much respect for the organic pioneers and entrepreneurs and the people that built this incredible $47 billion industry. It's amazing what's been accomplished. You know, I think the industry would be like 4 times bigger if we didn't have the barriers to entry like land conversion and infrastructure. And it's our job to keep building momentum for organic and regenerative. So you built this movement, really, that like 80% of all households participate in some way in the organic marketplace. That's a big deal. You took the high road, you took the high bar, you drew a line in the soil, and I'm proud to be here with my amazing team at Patagonia, my fearless team at Patagonia, not afraid to build supply chains. And many of you know I work for an organic pioneer, legendary climber and outdoor sportsman, Yvon Chouinard. Besides our apparel business that we started 46 years ago, in 2012, we started Patagonia Provisions, a food company focused on sourcing products in innovative ways that benefit and regenerate the planet. Over 20 years ago, Yvon saw the devastation that chemical cotton agriculture was doing to people and topsoil and biodiversity. And he made a now famous and financially risky decision to convert 100% of his product line to organic cotton. It wasn't easy. It wasn't cheap. We had to establish NGOs. We had to fund startup farms. We built supply chains. And we set up certifications. And we explained the change to our customers. And we've never looked back. So we're no strangers to participating and leading big shifts and marketing them to customers and building supply chains and certifications. And I'm really proud to say that over the last 20 years, we've been responsible for some of the most innovative green technologies and fibers and social and animal welfare initiatives in our industry. And we've influenced not just the apparel industry, but the broader fashion industry. I want to talk about regenerative organic agriculture, which everyone on this stage has been talking about in some form. You might have heard at Expo East, and I hope you take some time to learn about it at our happy hour today at 4:30. Come on by, we'll be serving Kernza beer. Yeah, and even if you're a skeptic about regenerative organic, you can come on and have some beer anyway. So I'll be there with David Bronner from Dr. Bronner's and Jeff Moyer from the Rodale Institute. We really respect the work that the Rodale Institute's done on organic and been committed to for so many years. And I'll be there with many other people who contributed and worked on the regenerative organic certification and the pilot. I just want to talk a little bit about how it came to be. David and I were at Expo West last year, and we were on a panel together. And there were people talking about the word regenerative, but they weren't using the word organic. And we started to ask this sort of fundamental question of how can practices be regenerative and when chemicals and synthetics and GM seed are being used. So it got us worried, honestly. So with the leadership of the Rodale Institute, Fair World Project, World Animal Compassion Project, soil scientists, pioneers like Michael Sly and Michael Bosanson, farmers like David Vetter and Will Harris, along with college students from 34 universities around the country, we got to work on a regenerative organic standard. And that standard would be the basis of the certification. A continuous improvement and innovation platform, raising the bar using the best possible science available on regenerative soil practices, while taking the best practices from social fairness and animal welfare and compassion. So focusing on really three pillars: soil health and regenerative practices, and social fairness and animal welfare, using USDA organic as our absolute baseline. Our aim was to build a coalition to champion a high standard and to use it to create demand in the marketplace and to co-learn and to influence policy and to hold the high bar for brands and their customers who frankly have been confused about which labels to trust. We sought public comment on the pilot. We received over 400 comments from brands, farmers, ranchers, processors, certifiers, and NGOs. We incorporated those comments into the pilot standard. We have more brands interested in piloting the standard than we have room for in the pilot. This year, we'll work on the pilot with brands who are ready to go on the journey. And we'll update anyone interested in our progress. And I just want to give you the website if you want to check it out. It's regenorganic.org. You can see the updated framework there. You can stay up to date. You can consider becoming an ally. I just want to take a couple minutes to dive into some of the science, and I think it's science, but it's also business issues that caused us to focus on regenerative organic agriculture, and why we felt we needed to build on USDA organic as a continuous improvement platform. And I say build on USDA organic because we absolutely respect it. But we feel like we needed to sort of raise the bar a little bit higher and take a look at these things that are really important to the customer. So very simply put, the health of people and the planet is reliant on healthy soil, and our soil is in trouble. This is being talked about in boardrooms and in many countries and states and cities around the globe. Issues of food sovereignty, organic agriculture, seed consolidation, climate disruption. Everyone knows what's happening. The big three chemical companies control 75% of all the seed and all the pesticides. US soil is being lost at a rate of 10 times faster than it's being replenished. The rise of chemical agriculture has coincided with an alarming rise in cancer rates and allergens and diseases. Pollinators are declining at shocking rates. And I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but when the pollinators are gone, it's game over for us humans. Right now, in the US alone, we spray 300 million pounds of Roundup a year. 300 million pounds. Soil is a living thing, and we spray 300 million pounds of toxic chemicals on a microbiome so teeming with life that there are more microorganisms in a teaspoon of soil, a teaspoon, than there are people on the planet. We live in an interconnected world. There is interconnected causation. This is reckless and suicidal behavior. It brings to mind the E.B. White quote, "I would feel more optimistic about a bright future for man if he spent less time proving that he can outwit nature and more time respecting her seniority." Scientists predict that current industrial farming practices and deforestation will eliminate topsoil in 60 years. That's if we continue on the course we're on. And as grim as that picture looks, the promise of regenerative agriculture is not only a process that can rebuild topsoil, but it can really impact climate change in a positive way. And in 2014, research from the Rodale Institute estimated that if current crop acreage and pasture land shifted to regenerative organic practices, 100% of annual global CO2 emissions could be sequestered in the soil. Healthy soil acts as a sponge for carbon. I'm a practical person, so I'm going to talk about the barriers to conversion. And most of you know these already, and they've been talked about, but I just want to kind of run through a few that I think we can work together on and really help solve some of these issues. This is really about working with nature and not about poisoning and dominating nature. I'm actually optimistic that these barriers can be overcome. I'm really excited to see so much conversation around regenerative agriculture at this expo from last year to this year. It's amazing. I think with cooperation and focus, we can work with trade organizations and consumer organizations and local and federal government if we work to shape policy. The biggest hurdles are farmer conversion and the cost of financing the conversion. And we've spent a lot of time talking to funds and managers and farmers. And you know, the math works. If the investors aren't too greedy, if we take a longer view, instead of subsidizing chemical monoculture, we should be pushing for policy that subsidizes organic transition. The cost of certification. We should be pooling capital and influencing policy to help supply chains transition and convert. The other issue is education and tools, and this is a place where innovation can play a huge part. Education at the farm level, but education at the customer level too, about continuous improvement and continuing to raise the bar. I still believe in science and facts, and they should be and they should drive and influence what we do as business people. It's the responsible thing to do, and it's good for business too. Another hurdle is that there's no consolidated database for soil testing to show that we're improving soil organic matter over time instead of degrading it. This seems to me to be an effort that everyone in the supply chain could come together on, and we could monitor our baselines and our progress. Topsoil is the wealth of our nation, and we are squandering it. It's good business to take care of soil. All of our supply chains depend on it. Another thing that I want to talk about, which can be a thorny issue a little bit, but it's important to talk about, because I think sometimes we put too much pressure on consumer organizations and the OTA. Policy and activism are key, which means brands need to stand for something. We need to stand together. Organic and regenerative and ethical food production need our voices, our unequivocal voices, and our minds and our ideas and our solutions. The customer is changing. The customer is demanding it. The customer is informed. The average 20-year-old has more information at their fingertips today than the president had 20 years ago. They're informed. They know what's going on. And to my friends, and I mean that sincerely, my friends in the conventional chemical agriculture movement who have brands that have chemical agriculture, I know that to make these shifts is almost impossible in the suicidal insanity of quarterly financial earning reports. But I would say maybe instead of overpaying for organic brands, you might consider just making the change in your own supply chain and investing in it. And I think your employees would be energized to spend their careers doing something really good for people and the planet. And if you're an organic, if you have an organic sub-brand in your portfolio, then come along on the journey with ROC. I think we'll all learn a lot together. And for my friends that run brands and organic brands, we have to continue to strengthen organic. We need to be more diligent about soil science and regenerative practices, social fairness and animal compassion, more stringent about policing fraud. We're not perfect at Patagonia. And we are not even, as a brand, we're not even there yet to this own standard that we developed. But we know it's where we need to go. And we want to have a world worth living in based on all the information that we have right now. If we want to look into the eyes of our children and our grandchildren and say we saw the gathering storm and we acted and we innovated, I ask you for the sake of people and the planet to embrace innovation and regeneration that will lead us to a new economy, not one based on algorithmic prices, the lowest possible price. Pushing organic prices so low will only hurt the farmer and the worker and the land. It's analogous to what we see in the apparel industry. If you buy a $2 t-shirt, you can pretty much guarantee that the person who made that shirt, human rights were violated and that the environment was harmed. The revolution is here. We can't come to an expo like this and pretend the status quo is acceptable anymore. Not when we know what we know. If we lose the planet, if we destroy topsoil and the well-being of people and animals, it'll be on our watch. We can't live in the gray area. We can't wait and see and play it safe. We have to act now. Coming together is really powerful. Coming together is transformational. We don't have to be held hostage by 3 chemical companies. There is a lot of strength and unbelievable power in our diversity. It's not time to step up, to stand back. It's time to step up and to be bold. One of my favorite quotes is that the world's changed by our actions and not our opinions. It's time to act boldly, just like the organic pioneers did. And I just want to say in conclusion, you know, I work for a man who's famous for saying how you climb a mountain is more important than reaching the top. And he has made some of the most breathtaking first ascents in the world. And what I've learned from him over the last 10 years is that the process is really step by step. But you have to know where you're going, and you have to be brave. And pretty soon you've first ascended a mountain that no one else has climbed. If you really want to protect people and the planet, it starts with food. It's time for us to stand together for a healthy economy that's good for people and good for the planet. I'm so grateful for this time. Please come by, have a beer with us, and let's talk about how to make a better world. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rose. Super inspiring. Well, you heard Rose. I think there's going to be a lot of people around the Patagonia Provisions booth drinking beer, so my advice would be to get there early. And I want to thank you all for being here today. And as Carlotta said, we'd love to see you in Austin. This is just about the right number, right, Carlotta? Okay, so we'll be there waiting, and we'll be hosting this type of conversation and working together to manifest the things that we're talking about together on this stage today. Thank you so much.